Let me start the recording. Uh, Now, JavaScript, if you take it as a programming language, now that is also quite useful and quite popular because that can be used in various places where you can actually use it as a programming language. And the skill that you're going to actually develop with JavaScript will help you to pursue career in various different software engineering or programming, computer related programming careers. So now, when we talk about the JavaScript, so this adds what we call the interaction and customer behavior for our sites. And we normally call this as a client-side script language. What it means, it will run on user's machine, right? And by saying so that it will not burn on the server like PHP, which we are going to discuss in coming sessions. Right. Now, when you talk about JavaScript, um, this is also known as dynamic, as well as what we call loosely typed programming language, which means like C, we are not going to use as a strong type, programming language. But then again, might have seen that when it comes to interact with various web components like filling form, you will get help interactive messages while you are filling the form. Especially this is quite useful for data validation. And then you will have some interactions. There are like collapsible content when you click on, let's say, section 1, section 2, section 3. So it will display only the particular section that you want to view. Similarly, when you just try to search something, you will see that it's automatically suggests the content, which can also be useful that actually we can implement with JavaScript. Now, when you say JavaScript, the name you should not confuse. That means when you look at this, the development of JavaScript is could be problematic as well because it can manipulate customer side of it. Right now let's look at what is we are going to talk about this. The very first thing that we discussed last time is, okay, let's look at how we can add JavaScript to a page. And simply, you can use script elements. Within the script elements, you can have the JavaScript code, which we normally call embedded script. Or you can have a separate file where you save the file with JS extension, and then you can call the script using script source, my script, JavaScript, and so on. Now, rather than embedding script, having external scripts is always useful because the same script you can run on multiple pages. But then, of course, the advantage comes with some cons as well. You have to have additional HTTP request the server. Now that we have discussed about how we can add JavaScript to a page, and we can also look at where we can put this code. And usually, normally we would say that the script element can go anywhere in the document, but most common places are head of the document, like between head and head, or within the body, right? this example, you see it'll within the body, right? Okay. Now let's look at some examples. For example, the basics is JavaScript is case sensitive, which means especially when you're creating naming or variables, you have to be very careful about what case you are using, because it's affects. So the next one is simply when you write JavaScript statements, uh, you can use when you take a statement like alert, you can display it as a box, and where you can say thank you, right? So yes, maybe, I mean, we should start with just by looking at it, how it works. So what I'm going to do, like we did earlier, I'm going to get a notebook environment, and with the notebook environment, I will create some pages, and then within that pages, we will see how this works, and then we'll cover the basics of JavaScript, and then we can do more examples. Right. Okay. So let's start. First, look at simple the document. Let's create a simple document, and then we'll just display some message, and let's see how it works. Okay. So to do that, let me take my previous examples. Give me a second, I will share my screen so that you can observe what is going on my screen. So I'm going to build on top of some existing codes. Right, now let me share my screen. So right now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a simple code. Right. So let me share this code with you as well, which is the same code that we have used earlier. So let me remove the style sheets, and then let's say I'm going to change the title as JavaScript example. And let me save as this file within the desktop. Let me say JS program 1 HTML. Right. Let me double click on it. Let me share my. Right. Here is what I have. Hope now you are visible everything. So let me share the code with you in the chat. So what you could do is you can copy paste the same, right? And then I will do some updates while we explain the examples. Right. Now, in previous example, we discussed how to embed the code, and I told you what you could do is you can use it within the script, and then you can have JavaScript. And I told you like where you can have. So, or else usually we say it goes to the very end or in the top of this. So let's start here. So within the head, I will write some JavaScript. So for example, we can say, okay, so we can say script, and then we end up with, /script. And simply you can type some commands and see what will happen within the code. So in this case, for example, you can type a simple alert. Alert will just give you a message. So let me try alert. Let me say hello world. And then we end up putting a semicolon. Let me save. File save, and let me refresh it. When I refresh it, you see that in the beginning, before we load the page, you see that this page says hello world, which, it's a simple message box, right? I can click OK. Now, similarly, there are different JavaScript examples you can use. For example, similar kind of window you can use a confirmation, right? Okay. For example, another function would built-in JavaScript function would be the confirm. And let's say right, as a simple confirmation, and let me refresh. So this is the first one, which is the alert. And the confirmation, you see, do you want more? And you can say okay, or you can say just cancel. You will have two buttons. One more, you can use prompt to get users input. For example, prompt, okay, what you want to learn, semicolon, let me save, let me refresh. Okay, so the first one is the alert function within this, and the second one is the confirm, and the third one is what you want to learn. Let me say basics, whatever you want to put it. Okay, I think now we just see how JavaScript could be embedded in a simple web page, and within the script as an embedded script, right? The next one would be like you can also have a script, usually has a separate file. So I would like to discuss this as well. For example, um, we could, create, and then you can um, variables, and then you can output, what are the values and so on, right? Now, for example, I'm going to create a new uh, file just to explain how external script works. So in the external script, you can just type the command that you want to have in the file. So let me just create a simple variable. Let me say, okay, wow, a number. I will say, okay, the number is 5, and let's print the value of the number. I will use alert, just say, sorry, number. And this is the very simple file. So I'm going to save this, save as. I will go inside the directory, and then I will save this as a simple JavaScript file, right? So you can provide any name you want. Let's say my script.js. So I save this as my underscore script JavaScript. In this particular case, I will save in the same directory. Let me save it. Now this time, I will go back to my original web page, and I will go to the very end. Well, I told you like you can have it in anywhere, but the most common places usually could be the head or could be the very end of the body. But you can actually use them in anywhere in the document. But then the problem will be if you put here and there, it will be very difficult to find. So usually recommended places are at the very end. So let's use the script. Now I have already have a script, and it's located in the same directory. So the script source is the same directory, and my file name I have given is script.js, and then slash script, right? So now let's see how it will work right now. Let me refresh this. Okay, it start from the top three embedded ones. I will just click, and then you see the very end what we have the code. Okay, right. I think now I hope you got the basic understanding of how JavaScript are added, and hopefully those who have learned this already done, you have done this as well. So let's look at some basics, and then we can do a comprehensive JavaScript example. But before we continue, I would like to know like how many have finished up to this point, and whether you are comfortable adding a JavaScript file as an embedded script as well as external document. Please indicate this by just raising your hands. Right. Thanks, everyone. Let's move on to the basics now. So let's focus on the basics of JavaScript. The first thing that we have discussed is JavaScript case sensitive. So you have to be very careful about, especially when you're using variables. Make sure you use the same cases all the time. The second point is the statements, like in every statement, usually we have the semicolon. In this example, if you want to display some message box, or we call it alert, so we can say alert, and within bracket we put the message that you want to display, and then you will have a semicolon. Comments always recommended when you're writing scripts, and you later on, if you want to know like what you did, so make sure that you use plenty of comments in your code. Single line comments can be included using two slashes, and the multi-line comments, you can use slash and asterisk for multi-line comments. Variables, as I told you, is they are references, and especially refer and variable. Now, for example, in this one, what you see here is we create a variable called foo, and then we assign 5. So we use the JavaScript keyword var, that when you're creating a variable, and then you will assign 5, right? So it will create a variable with the name foo, and then it will assign value 5, right? Then different data types. Now remember, when you create variables, it depends on how we defined. It assigns the data type. Now, for example, if you take the very first one, we have a variable foo, but we have not assigned any value. So the data type it will take is called undefined, right? So remember that this is not recommended. Always try to assign some value. You might encounter issues if you're using this. The second one is you can assign variable null. So in this particular case, you have a variable called foo, and then you assign null value. Now, when you assign null value, but what it means, you create a variable, but there's no value in it. The best way is you assign some value. For example, here we assign 5 to foo, and then of course you can further manipulate this. Now in this example, you will see we say alert method, and we just have the variable foo plus foo. So in this particular case, this is use of mathematical operation. That means we are adding. So that means it will refer 5 plus 5, which is 10. Then what we have is string values. Especially string values, we can use, for example, double quotes to indicate that string values. You can use either single quotes or double quotes. I hope you know the difference. Whenever you have one quote in as a part of the string, then you can use the other one. So in this example, when you say variable foo equals 5, and then when you say foo plus foo, remember that now this time it's a string, and then although we have a plus, you cannot add actually to, but it'll concatenate it. Concatenation, what it means is just glue these together.
Same goes with the second example as well. Here also we define as what you call a string value, because you have double quotes. And again, this means concatenation. And then when you have mixed types, right? In this particular case, our first one is string and the second one is a number, but then it'll again glue together because the integer will cast into a string value. Okay, just try this. You can write as a script file, and you can just compare the answers. Now, for example, I can go back. Let me go to my script, and then let me put some values. Now, the values what we had was, okay, I will use the same things. Let's say foo assigns, let's say 5. And then we'll say alert foo plus foo, right? Let me save this. Let me refresh. Okay, first three, after the first three, you should see, okay, 5 plus 5, you get 10. Right, now let me use the other ones. So for example, wow, foo equals, this time I will use a string value. And then when I say foo plus foo, remember, now what happens here, right? So in this particular case, this is a string. So string concatenation will be the output. So we have 10, and then we have 5, 5. So try the other couple of things that we have seen. So for example, I said, wow, foo equals 5. Again, this is treated as a string value. So foo plus foo, again, you will get 55. Wow, we will have foo equals 5. Again, I'm going to create a variable bar equals 5. That is mixed types. And this is what will happen when you say alert foo plus bar. You will get 5, 5, right? So file save. Let me refresh. First 3 commands, right? And then you have a 10 for the first instance. Then you have 5, 5 for the second instance. Third one, you have 55. And fourth one, 5, 5. Finish up to this point. Okay, let's move on. Similarly, we can also assign a Boolean variable like true, false. And then you can see we have used the same variable which you can use, and depend on what value we assign, the data type will change. Right. Similarly, arrays are also quite useful, especially when you want to, manipulate. And in JavaScript, actually, you can have, mixed value like this. So you can see here that it will use foo, and then here to denote the array, we are using square brackets, and then we have 3 elements. And remember, in JavaScript also, its index start with 0. So when you say foo 0, which directs the first element, which will display 5, and the second one, foo 1, will display again 5, and then third one, it will again display 5. There are several array methods actually you can use, which will be useful for you. For example, you can use concatenation to join multiple arrays. You can get the index of a specific object. You can use join last index of. Then you can use pop to remove items from a list. Push if you want to add new element to the add. Reverse if you want to sort in descending order. Shift, you can remove the first element of an array. Slice, you can get a portion of array into new array. Sort, you can sort elements alphabetically. Splice again adds element to a specific way and a position, the place that you want to insert a particular item. To string, you can convert element to string. Value of it'll return the first position which we gave based on a value, right? And then we will discuss arithmetic operations. For example, you can use addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, or modulus operation, which means remainder, increment, decrement, and adds the values to itself that we will have. So we can use these as basic operators available in JavaScript. Then you can also use comparison operators, which is helpful for you to make comparisons. You can use equal signs, not equal signs, triple equal signs, and which means whether it's identical. And then the fourth one is not identical to. Okay, let me explain this, what it really means. Now, I will go back to my the script, right? Now here, what I want to emphasize here is we can check, right? For example, okay, I will go back to my script as the fourth one. Maybe I will say alert. Okay, I will put 5 double equal 5 in a string. So you can see the first one is a number and the second one is a string. But let's see how JavaScript identifies it. So you can see, do you want more, the second one, the third one? And it says true, which means, okay, it compares basically based on just the value, right? But remember that it won't, compare with their date type. So that is the difference, right? Just the values. But if you say alert, if you say 5 triple equal sign, basically this will check whether this is identical, right? So that means the value and the data type both will be evaluated. So for example, let's just finish this. Okay. And let me refresh it. File, save, refresh. Okay, we should go for the fourth one. Okay, first it says true and then it says false. So make a note of this about, the different values. Right, that is about the identical operation. And then we can move on. So you can try these. I'm not going to spend time on that. For example, the first one we will get true, the second one true, the third one false, the fourth one, which is what we discuss, which says true. But then fifth one, you will get false because they are not in the same type. Right, now let's look at the conditional in JavaScript. So for example, in this case, we can have if statement, and depend on the condition, then you are going to do something. So that is if you have only if part only. So the second one is, let's say you get in this particular case, you have two parts when the condition evaluates to true and when condition evaluates to false as well. Right, then you can also have loops. In loops, for example, similar to the C structure. For example, let's say we have a value, then you have a initialization of the variable will be the first thing, and then you have a test condition, and then alter the value, which means increment or decrement, right? So let's do two simple examples on the selections, right? For example, I will go back to, right. Now here I'm going to remove everything. So let's focus only on what we have. And then let's say in my script. Right, now what I'm going to do is let me have a simple if statement. Let's say if you will say marks, I will say, let's say 85. If marks are greater than or equal to, let's say 50, we will say Okay, so we have can have marks of 50, and then we can say, okay, alert, pass, else so let me save. Let's run this, and it says pass. This is not very interactive, but you see it does the purpose. So what you can do is you can use prompt to get it from the user in case if you want to depend on what marks you want to get. Let's say you want to say pass or fail, that you can actually change. Right. Next one, let me discuss a for loop. Right. So let's try with a for loop. Let's say I want to print numbers from 1 to 10. Yes. So in that particular case, let's say we will use a for loop to do that. So in for loop, usually we have the start value. Let's say I equals 1. Then we can say I less than or equal to 10. And then we can have I plus plus. So let's, within this, we can have alert box. Let's say I. Let me refresh it. So you will have, 10 alerts. Each displays a number between 1 to 10. Just let me know if you finish up to this point. let's move on. Now, for example, when you use especially the arrays, the loops are very useful. And in this example, what you see is creation of an array, and also output each of these items. Now remember that here we would like to know the number of items in the array. So you can see here we are using items.length, and we start with 0, right? Let me quickly explain that one as well. So here what we have in this example, what we are going to is we are going to work accessing elements from an array, and then so the first one is we need to create array, let's say var items, and then we know that we have to use square brackets. So in this one we are creating like 3 string items. We have foo, var, and base, right? Okay, the for loop, okay, you have to create a variable, and this time we index start with the 0, and then we have to check how many the number of items. That is 3. You can put 3 here, but the best thing would be that you can just get the length by calling this, and then we increment I, right? Now within this, what we want is the items. So let's print items, and let's say I. We should display one at a time. So items length will display the number of items in the array. And then when I say alert items I, first it is 0, which prints the first one. So let me save this file, save, let me refresh. So I'm just double checking whether I made a mistake. Wow, items, okay. And then we start with 0, and then should be less than length. And then we increment the items, and we used to use alert items, right? So file save. Okay. Okay, thanks letting me know the error. So the mistakes Tarindu pointed out that we, okay, I put a semicolon. So I have removed that. Thanks Tarindu for letting me know. Yeah, it's working now. Right, going through each and every item in the list. Right, let's move on to the next one. Now that we have discussed about this, let's look at briefly like how functions are defined in JavaScript. We know there are like lots of built-in functions are there. We already discussed alert, confirm, and prompt. And then there are other functions like date, pass int, which is converting string into integer value. We can also have setting out time for a function, and then that's what you will see here, right? So these are like what we call the built-in functions available. And then sometimes we have to create our own set of functions. So the command is, we can say function, and then you can provide the name of the function, and then you can have the body of the functions after that, right? But to call the functions, you have to use the function. So we can have the code right after that, right? We can make use of it. Right. So let's quickly look at that one as well. So how to use of this. Now, for example, so I'll take, so in this particular case, let's look at creating custom functions. So in this example, what we have just did is simple function, right? So let's say function and a name of the function. And then you can have a body of the function. So in this example, what we have is a very simple one, right? Let me put it as test, right? And then calling function, you can say, okay, foo, and then we can have brackets. So let me see. So let me run. So ideally it should, display test here. Now, in this example, what you should notice is it will not return any value back into main program. But in case if you want to return a value to a main program, then you should use return, right? Which is similar in other programming languages as well. Yes, have you finished up to this point? please indicate whether you have finished or not, because only way I can realize is if you raise your hands, only I know that the whole class actually finished up to this point. In case if you're not just trying and just watching and trying thinking of doing it later on, I just want to know whether you have understood this part. Right, let's move to the next one. Now, in this one, what happens when we call the function? It'll display a message test, and that's all. It won't come back to the main program. But sometimes the result, we won't further manipulate this. Now, if you have a situation like this, we should return. You use the keyword return to get it. Now, let's say you have, just to explain this one, let me create a function called add. And let's say it takes two numbers in one and in two, right? And let's say we find the total as in one plus in two. And let's say we alert total. Now I can call the function. So this is add. Let's say add 2, 3, add 20, 30. Just calling the function twice. Let's see what will happen. So 2, 3, we have 5. And then the next one, it says 50. Now let's try to assign this answer to a variable. And let's see what will happen. Something like this. Yes, of course, you can have var variable, you can have it. Now, remember, now what we are trying to do here is the variables we created within the function, the total. Now, to understand what is happening here, if you just use total equal n plus 1 n2, the value is global. And because of that reason, okay, let me show you that. So this is the function code. And then, okay, now, no, I mean, I want to show you the answer first. And then let's say alert. And let's see what will happen now. Let me explain as well. So let me save here, save. and let me refresh. So it shows 5, that 5 actually coming from this alert, because in this alert, it shows you that, okay, you get 2 and 3, find the total, and then you display the total value. The next one, it says undefined. Okay, the reason the next one we get undefined because that value is not returned to the main function. So if you want to return the function to main, instead of just displaying the answer, you should return into the main. So usually what we prefer is use the return keyword, and we can say total. So by doing so, what we do, we get 2 and 3, we perform the calculation, and we return value back into this. Now, let's see what will happen. I'm going to save it. I'm going to refresh. Okay, I'll get 5. So in this time, we have only one alert. And then that means 2, 3 is passed into this function, and the value is returned back. If you finish up to this point, just raise your hand, then I'll move to the next one. So we have earlier seen how we can actually create function and the arguments that we put. The 2 examples in previous one, we didn't have any argument. And the second example, we had 2 arguments, and we use return keyword, especially when you want to further manipulate the outcome from the function, then you should use the return keyword. Right. I want to discuss very important thing in JavaScript, especially when you're using variables within the functions, how it works. Now, especially depend on how you define the values. sometimes it won't be visible to the outside of the function. Now, two things we are going to discuss about here: global scope and local scope. The idea of global means if you have any variables outside the function, it will available everywhere. But if you have a variable within the function, and if you use a var keyword, make a note of this. If you define a variable within the function, and if you have var keyword, it's local. But if you have a variable without var keyword, then we say it's global. Right, now let's try to understand this with a simple example. So in this example, you see we have a function double and we have a number. And simply what we do, we double the number. And you see here we have var total 10, and we call the function here with this variable, and we try to print the total value. Now let's try to understand what happens. So I'm going to use this. So let me create the function first. So function double, and we have one argument, sorry, parameter, and then we have, let's say, total, and we add the number again, and we return the total. This is function creation. Then let's say we have total, we'll say 10. Var, we have number double, we have 20. Alert total, right? So here is, just try to understand what happened. Now here we will have a variable total 10, and we have a number double 20. And then we say alert 20. So let me put this as now accordingly. Now we send double 20, and total we ideally expect 10, isn't it? I forgot semicolon here as well. Forgot semicolon here as well. Okay. We have function double num, and then we have total num plus num. We have return total, and we have total, and we have, okay, I missed the B here, right? Okay, I'm getting 40. Now let me explain Why we are getting 40 here? Now total is 10 and it's outside the function. So that means it's global, right? But then we have double 20. It's nothing to do here. The number becomes 40. But when you are trying to print total, so what we expect here is you should print 10. But what happens since you send 20 here, 20 plus 20, total becomes 40. And there's no var keyword here. So when you don't have a var keyword, so this treats as a global. That means this will be visible to the outside as well. So to prevent this one, what we should do, we should make it a var total. And now you will see when you refresh, you will get 10. Now, why we are getting 10 now? Since this is local to the function, it will not, visible to the outside. This total will not be visible to the outside. So that means outside this, the total is 10 and it will print 10. Okay, just observe these two with and without var keyword. And when you finish, you raise your hands, then I will explain one more time about the variables. So this is what you need to remember about the JavaScript. So var identify a value. If it is outside, it's global. So that means this is global. But if you have var inside the function, it will be local. So that's why second time when you put var here, nothing changed to the total, it displays 10. But if you have just value inside the function like this will be global scope. So that's why now initially total is 10, but since you call the function here, total will be assigned 20 plus 20, 40, and that is visible to the outside, and that's why you are getting 40 here. Right. So that's about the variable scopes. Right. Okay, let's move to the next one. Now, what we talk about earlier is like the basics of JavaScript syntax. Now, let's look at more detail about how we can output things. Now, so far we discussed the alert function. We will have a alert box in the browser window, right? Confirm, you have a yes and no, okay, cancel button. And then you can use log function. Now the log function is normally we can use to write in the browser, especially when you want to output intermediate values, we can use it. And then you can use document.write, which directly write to the HTML document. And prompt, we can use it for getting input from the user. Right. Now, let's talk about the browser object. Now, when we talk about the elements on the web page, you can manipulate the browser. So you can manipulate the browser window itself. Now, for example, you can change the web address in the address bar. You can open the browser, you can close the browser, and so on. So in JavaScript, usually browser is known as what we call the window object. So now you have different properties where we can use. We can normally say these are browser properties and methods, right? Now, for example, if you look at in this table, it shows you browser property and method. You can have event property. So it's a property which represent the state of an event. You have history, contains URL of user visited within the window. Location, read-write access to URI in the address bar. Status, set and return the text in the status bar of the window. Then you have methods, already we discussed alert. But if you use close method, that will close the current window. Confirm, you can use again OK and cancel buttons. Focus, you can set the focus of the current window. Now that we look at a window object, the next thing that we should focus on different events that we can have, right? So what happens, you can use JavaScript to listen what is happening in the web page, right? So for example, JavaScript can listen to when the document loads. JavaScript can listen to when user clicks on element. Or sometimes even when you move the mouse over a particular element, let's say an image, you can identify. So when you write script, if you want to identify these events, or if you want to do something based on these events, you should identify these events using what we call event handling, right? Now, for example, if you have on load, right? If you go down here, right? We say there's an event handler called on load, right? So what means a page or image is finished loading. So especially when you want the document is loading, you can trigger that. Similarly, focus on click. So that means when you click, right, on a particular element. Okay, let's say on mouse over. So that means if the mouse is moving over an element, let's say you have button and then you try to move the mouse through the button. So these could be detected.
right? And these are known as events. Now, there are three common ways that we can talk about how we should apply these events. First one, you can use it as an HTML attribute, right? So what it means, you can specify function when you want to run an attribute in a markup, right? Now, for example, in the body we can have, I will come to that but later on. So when you body, when you click, it might, evaluate something. So that is one way to do that, right? So let me go back to our, right. So in this one, I will create a new function. Let's say my function. And alert. Right. I just create a script. Now I'm going back after creating a function, my function, alert test. I'll copy paste in the chat in case if you missed it. And then here, I will go to body and then I will type OK. On click, let's execute my function. So let me save, let me refresh. Nothing will happen, but when you click it, you see the event occurs. Again, let me refresh, nothing will happen, but when you try to click it, okay. So now you see the event triggers and then it displays the alert message. So this is the first way to do that. Now the second one is, okay, maybe you first finish this one, and once you finish, just let me know. So we have function, my function, and then I included within the body, when you are clicking, it will execute the function, my function, which will display a message box which says test. So let me explain what I did. What we were discussing is how to react, events. And for example, I told you as example events like when the page loads, or when you click it, or when you mouse over on particular object, then we can interactively work on different things. Now, for example, in this one, we have a function called my function, and we simply message box text. And what we do, we have an event called on click,
So what happens here now when you see on click? So now it will run the function. Okay, you can change on click to on load, for example. And you can see what will happen. Let's refresh. Okay, now you see when you load the page, it'll execute. So let's say on mouse over, on mouse over, let me refresh. Nothing will happen. But when you go over, okay, now you see. Hope now you got the idea. So there are some event handlers we can trigger how user interacts with the browser, and depend on different actions we can perform, different things. Now, right now, how we did it, okay, you can see now it's continuously running because, whenever you go over, it'll execute. You see the point now, right? Okay. Okay, then. Now that we have talked about the events, right? We can move to the next one. The second method is we can have a method attached to the element. Now, what it means? Now, earlier, we have put it as a attribute. But now the next one is, right? We are going to say using simply a method attached to particular element. So what happens here? We have my function. When user clicks on anything in the browser window, it will run. So we can say window on click, we can say my function. So let's go back and see how we can implement this. So right now, this is what I have. So I'm going to, this is my script, and I'm going to remove this. Earlier, we put it as an attribute. Now, when you refresh it, you will see nothing will happen. But now, within this, we will run, okay, we will say, okay, window, and then we will say on click. I will say, okay, my function. So right now, when you refresh, when you click it, now you see. Now, this is the second technique. Now, it's with the script itself, right? Okay. So you can see the second method. I will go back again. This is the script. So we put window.onClick, and then we call the function. So what it means, this is a second method as a method. The event handler to item within that we create it as a method attached to the element. So we call window.onClick. Right. Finished? If you raise your hands, if you finish up to this point, then I can explain the third method, that is add event listener. Okay, let me explain the third method. Now, third method is very similar to the second method as well. You might see that it's a little bit more complex, but this is easy because we can use at listen method with whatever the target object, and then we can specify the events or function to execute. So right now what we do is we write what event we want to have. Now instead of this, in the third method, what we do, we have something called add event capitalization matters listener. So this method, and then here we will specify what the event is. Now the event is click event, isn't it? So we will say, okay, we want to listen to the click event, and when you see a click event, okay, execute my function. This is how the syntax. So in this one, so you can see this is always the same, but here we can specify what event that we are listening and then what function you want to execute. That's all. The output will be the similar, but when you see refresh it, when you click it, okay, you see that it will execute the my function. Finished? Okay, if you finish up to this point, I think we discussed the basics. With that, we conclude, the basics of JavaScript. The next thing is we wanted to do simple exercise by putting what we have learned everything together, create function. So what I will do, I will, have a small assignment for you to work on, JavaScript, right? Okay, so next week, my plan is we are going to again focus on JavaScript, but this time we are focusing on what we call the document object model, which is, once you have HTML, the structure, for example, if you want to manipulate the content of a document, how are we going to do, right? So that exactly what we are going to look at by understanding what the node tree is and DOM node is. And then based on that, we are going to select accessing, DOM nodes. You can use using elements, you can use using IDs and so on, various ways of, getting the element, and also like manipulating the nodes, right? So that part is what we are going to discuss. Right. Okay, then. That's all for today. If you have any questions, please do let me know, like any issues you might have faced. If you don't have anything, then I think we can conclude today's session. I will have a very small assignment for you to work on, JavaScript. Okay. Right. That's all for today then. Let's meet next week.
Thank you, Victor.